All right, welcome back to the show. Today we have a very special guest. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Colleen Gallagher. I'm an author, I'm a coach, and I'm really here to support people in creating a life they love.
How are you today?
I'm good. I'm super excited to be here in this space with you and co-creating this time with you.
Excellent. Glad to have you. I've been excited to get you on the show and kind of hear some more about you and what you do.
Totally. So, I really just started my journey very normally, I feel like, as a person. And I grew up with two parents who were lawyers. And I kind of always had this paradigm that you were, going to go to school and then you get a job and then you work and you live a good life and you retire. Like that was really what I knew about life. And I had quite an awakening because at 14, I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. And this kind of really gave me access to a lot of people that were older than me that were getting cancer, and they weren't able to really I saw like what happened when you didn't live a life that was true to you. I saw what happened when you stayed in relationships that weren't right for you. I saw what happened. Like I just saw like all these things that happened when you didn't like put yourself first and go for your dreams. And so as I lived my life, I kept having these moments in my life where I felt like there was just more to life. And I was working for a $23 billion company right after college. And I closed a really large sales deal at the time, like a multiple six-figure sales deal. And I came home and I just crashed on my couch and I was so empty and I felt so like unfulfilled. And I was like, how can this be? Like I just did something so amazing for a 21, 22-year-old and I just feel empty. And this is where I began to notice like there's just more to this life. And so I remember my dream at the time. I always had a dream to live international. And so what I did was that I began to save my money for 3 months. I decided I was going to quit my job and move across the world to New Zealand and find a job there and like basically fulfill my dream. And so I did that. I got a job with a $400 million company within a month of being there. And I found out that I basically just picked myself up and moved myself to a new environment. And I was doing the same thing over and over and I was still unhappy. And so I realized you can't just pick yourself up and move across the world, even if it's more beautiful and you like the weather better and whatever, and expect things to change. I realized like I had to really go inward on this. And so I began to do yoga and meditation 4 hours a day. And I had this idea and this awakening that I was going to write a book. And I hired my first coach who I met online. And I began to build my business where I was like, I'm really going to empower everyone that I meet to see that they can live their truth, that they can intoxicate the world with love, that they can make money doing what they love. And that was back in 2017. In 2018, I started my company. I wrote my first book. I now have 3 books. My 4th book, The Cycles of Love, comes out at the end of this month or early April. I have 33 online courses I've designed, created, and launched. I have 5 other products, and I'll be done with my PhD this year.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's a lot to accomplish.
Yeah. And we've served, I think, close to 600 clients in 5 years. We have a community of 80,000 people online and then also a top 400 podcast. So it's definitely been like the most incredible journey of my results and then also the people that we've been able to serve globally and watch their results.
And that just goes to show you right there that when people tell you hard work pays off, it's true. If you have something you're shooting for, don't let anybody tell you can't, because of those people who tell you can't usually are the ones who won't do it or can't do it.
Totally. And yeah, I definitely don't think anything happens overnight. Like consistency is key over a lifetime, and making sure that when you hear the knock within you, or when you hear like the calling inside of you that you want whatever it is you want for your life, if it's a family, if it's a career, if it's entrepreneurship, if it's, promotion, whatever it is that you want, that you listen to that knock and you do everything you can in your power to make it happen.
Exactly. And that was my whole philosophy in doing what I'm doing. It's one of those things kind of like yourself where it kind of evolved into where you are now. Unfortunately for me, it's still a work in progress, but like you said, just keeping at it. That's really where the groundwork is, because no matter what you do in life, you're not going to get there, like you said, overnight. It's not going to happen, as quickly as most people think it does.
Yeah. So you just kind of keep at it. And then it's like they always say, like, I don't know, like when you're walking up like a big staircase, it's like, the first one looks like really big and it's like the biggest step because it's like something brand new. So you're like, oh shoot, like this is like such a big step. What am I going to do? And then what you do is it starts like adding. So it's like the first one thing is you're like add addition. And then from addition, you move to multiplication. And from multiplication, you move to compounding.
Exactly. And, it's one of those things where I feel like, just hearing that little tidbit of your journey to where you are now, it's one of those things that if it were easy, everyone would do it. But that, I think, is for a lot of people who are entrepreneurs and doing things that are kind of outside the norm, so to speak, it's the challenge to do it. And then, getting to the end of the road or getting to that one specific goal and being like, yeah, I did it.
Yeah, I think what I always like to pose, and I think that the question that let me take that one step of like leaving my corporate job and to move across the world to New Zealand, like the question that haunted me, like, and I really say that, and it still makes me emotional about to say that, like, it really haunted me was, can I live with myself not doing this decision? Like, can I live with myself? Like, if I was to die, if cancer was to come back, like, could I live with myself of not saying I went for this? And that question haunts me with a lot of things. And I feel like that's why, like, my business early on in my 20s, I took a lot of risk really early on, which is why cancer was a blessing, because it let me go for the things that I wanted. And I realized what would haunt me, like what things are big. I just cannot live without making this happen or like going for it. And the thing is, I'm like, I could live with that not happening. And like a big decision people always say is like, I could live with myself not getting married young. I couldn't live with myself for not traveling the world on my own young. Like that was a big, you know what I'm saying? That was something that I've, and I looked at things like that, like which one is going to haunt me more if I'm on my deathbed. And that's like, what would kind of be my meter of what would guide me to take action, even if it was scary or it caused me anxiety or all those things.
Yeah. And, it's also the fact that you were able to take the leap of faith and trust in yourself that you were able to do what you did, because for a lot of people, I feel like taking is such a big risk is a scary thing, and it's scary for everyone. But without risk, there's no reward. And when you get to be 70, 80, 90, it's one of those things where you're gonna regret not doing what you wanted to do and not at least trying to see.
Yeah. So I would say like that was what I did, and that's what I've supported a lot of my clients with, of like, how do you gauge that meter for your own life? And my first course that goes with my first book, Live Your Truth, it's called How to Create Your Fairy Tale Life. That course I guide you through. You can do it as a self-study course. You can do it with me. I've had many people do it on their own, but I guide you like, what is it in your life that stopped you from taking the risk you want to take? And how do we gauge that meter for you so you can begin to correct yourself in the present moment to take action that will leave you with a brilliant future?
Exactly. So tell me about the program that you have that you've helped so many different people with, and how that applies to a wide range of people.
Yeah, so I have 33 online courses that I've created, launched, and sold. But the one I just specifically spoke about was How to Create Your Fairy Tale Life. So that one is really for you if you're really just going through, like, you're on the brink of a breakup or a divorce, you just went through a breakup or a divorce, and you're really looking for clarity on why is it that you're here? What is your purpose? How do you make sense of this kind of trauma or past or this cluster wild story you have? How do you begin to shift through it and sort through it and then create an empowering story for you to share with other people that you can begin to inspire and motivate others, whether that's through speaking, whether it's through therapy, whether it's through a certain product you offer, but like really having a solid marketing story for yourself to begin to repeat. So then you can create your own community of people who have gone through similar things as you have. So you become a leader in this specific area that God's offered your life problems through. And that's that course. That is like, how do we take what you've been and live your truth and heal and empower others?
What goes into making these courses? Because I would imagine some of it probably would be a little bit on the difficult side, but a lot of it, I would imagine, is knowing that somewhere it's gonna help somebody. It's gonna touch them in such a way that whatever they're going through is gonna help flip the switch and kind of change course.
Yeah. So my first course, right, it really just went, I knew I had my book and I knew that I wanted to travel the world, and I knew that I wasn't able to do that my first year just on one book. I didn't have capital for that. So I figured, what can I do? And I began to learn about online funnels and online webinars. And I figured, well, I could make my first book a 6-week program because there's 5 steps in my first book. So I went through and I learned how to teach this from my book to then like implementing it in your life. And that was that book. And then people were going through it and loved it. And they wanted to know, Colleen, how do you manifest? So I decided, okay, I'll make a manifestation course. And so I went through my process of how I manifest and made an 8-week course out of it. And then people just kept coming more and more. And right now my course that I'm launching, because we always are launching something throughout the year, is how to change your relationship with money. Because what was it, 3 years ago now, that was when I built that course, because I didn't know that you had to do your taxes. Because when I was like growing up, you always had an organization just give you a W-2 form. Like as an entrepreneur, business owner, I never knew, especially because I was a very non-traditional business. I'm totally digital. I have no physical address besides my home for my business, which was obviously very new because we didn't go through what we had gone through in 2019 yet. And so I had to realize this. And then I was like, oh my God, if I'm struggling this with money, and I went like $100,000, nearly $200,000 in debt, and came out of $100,000 of it in the same year. And I was like, oh my God, if I have this like crazy relationship with money and I have all these things I don't understand about money, surely there's other people that are struggling with money in these same ways. And that's when I made that course. So it was always just taking what I was going through and then creating it as an education system for other people, because I knew I wasn't the only one struggling.
And I think that's amazing to know that there are people like yourself out there that are taking real life situations, that good or bad, that you've been through, and are putting information out there, in courses or in books that is able to help people that may be in that same situation or something similar, to where they're probably not freaking out as much, and they can kind of take a step back and take it step by step all the way through.
Yeah.
So I am curious. Early in the episode, you were talking about meditation.
Mm-hmm.
So I've heard several different people talk about meditation and how that kind of centers yourself and kind of, for a lack of better terms, because I'm not super familiar with it, but it kind of relaxes you and gets rid of a lot of stress, and it's able to make you calm. How exactly did that work for you? And as far as the process of it, was it hard to get into it? And then, I would imagine your journey through that, it's probably something that, you touched on that was helpful, but what was the journey like getting into that and making that a daily habit?
Yeah. So I think like anything in life, right? Like, I don't think there's anything that is perfect. I think you have to make a choice and decision that this is what I want, and this is what I'm deciding for myself. Like, if you want to work out, you have to decide it, right? If you want to have a relationship, you have to decide, like, I want a relationship with this person. If one day you just stop responding and stop showing up home, you're not going to have a relationship anymore. Like everything, it's a decision, right? And so I knew, I read about it enough that I wanted to make it a habit of mine. And I actually have a meditation archive where I have about 24 of my own meditations that I've led and guided that anyone can get access to. If you go to my website, you can get it. And also on my podcast, I know episode 55, and I think an episode of the 90s, I have a meditation, or my YouTube channel. But for me in the beginning, it was probably to calm my mind, but it was also to release things. It was a lot of letting go. It was a lot of like how to release things that were holding me back, that didn't serve me anymore. And then the second thing that I feel like it really did for me is it allowed my mind to be so still and so clean, like almost like there was no chaotic noise in it, where I could receive ideas. I could receive like visions, I guess, of what it is I wanted, like my first book. And when I meditated, it really supported me in that process. And that's why I guess I loved it in a lot of ways. And I think everyone, it does something different for you based on what you're looking to receive from quieting your mind, from being present with yourself, from turning inward. It could be so many different things depending on the person and what they're experiencing in their life journey at a specific moment.
And that's what I've heard is it's based on the person as far as the result and, the things that change in your life. And it's one of those things where, like you said, it helps you quite a bit. And I feel like that you're helping people with what you do. And that's a rarity, especially nowadays. A lot of people are almost always in something for the money, or they're in it for themselves to, be able to, beat their chest, so to speak. And I'm glad that there are people out there like you that are making the world a better place, one person at a time.
Yeah, and I write that actually in my first book. I say, like that analogy of you're looking at the beach and there's all the starfish on the sand. You can't fix them all, but you can start to throw one at a time back in. And before you know it, you may have a community of people being with you to throw more and more back in. And one activation of someone into the light, or one awareness for someone to become more enlightened or more aware of what they want out of this life and to fulfillment, the more that they're going to be able to do that for other people.
So I am curious, I know that with being able to help people, it's not only like a good feeling to know that you've helped people, but I've heard certain situations and certain people that when you help people, it helps you in a way, depending on the situation.
Yeah, so it's funny actually, even on my story today, I was saying like my Change Your Relationship with Money course, like it's so funny. Every time I teach a course, even though I've had some of these courses for years now, every time I teach it, it helps me more because I'm going through something on the back end that it always up levels you. Like, because every time you teach something, you're kind of like, they always say if you want to like really know something, right? First you absorb it, you receive it, right? The second part is you repeat it, and the final step is you teach it, and the last step is you live it. And like when you can do that, that's like when you really like embody something. But I think every time you come back to anything in your life, you're at a new chapter, you're at a new scenario in your life that's going to allow you to expand in something that you didn't see before because it wasn't a life scenario you had that you were experiencing.
Exactly. And and it's also, for me, it's one of those things where with everything being so digital now, you're leaving your mark on the digital society that we have, and that will never go away. And depending on whether it's good or bad, you could either help someone, which we all, I would hope, would like to do that, and then you have those people that like leave bad karma and bad comments, or whatever the case may be, videos. It's one of those things where I feel like just being on the other side of things, that being a positive influence in today's society is not only a much needed thing, it's very invaluable, just because there's so much going on in the world, and everybody needs a little bit of help somewhere along the way, or some advice, or just general direction. And I think that what you're doing through your courses and through your books, it is a wonderful thing.
Yeah,
You can't say that enough.
Thank you for seeing me that way. No, it's really my biggest purpose, and there's nothing I love more than offering value and leveraging my life experience so it supports other people in creating a life they love, to more fulfillment. Because when we do that, I think the world just becomes a better place, and it always starts with us.
Yeah, and it's kind of like a pay it forward situation where if you help somebody, regardless of what it is, then they may run across somebody who may need a little bit of push in a certain direction, or may need somebody to give them advice, whatever the case is. And eventually, like you were touching on, it becomes this larger thing that over a period of time, one person could end up helping, 500 people by the end of it, just by doing one kind thing.
Exactly.
So, as far as your book, or your books, I should say, where can people find those? Are they just digital, or?
You can go on my website, colleengallagher.co, not .com, just .co, and you can get a signed copy of them. Or you can go on Amazon, or if you just Google, they're at Target, they're at Walmart. You can get them anywhere and buy them and get them shipped to you.
Very cool. And then as far as social media, I know I found you on Instagram.
Mm-hmm. I'm on Facebook. I have my podcast. So I have, let me think about this. So we have The Colleen Gallagher is my handle for Facebook, for Instagram, I think for Twitter, for YouTube. And then my podcast is The Colleen Gallagher. So yeah, that's everything.
So as far, and I am curious, being a podcaster myself, what is that like for you? Just because, it's one of those things where I know for me, I get jitters every time I go to talk to someone. And I would imagine, having so many people that can listen to your podcast and be able to absorb some of the things that you go through from episode to episode. What is that process like for you?
Like just creating?
Being able to create it, and the kind of topics that you go through, that kind of thing.
That's such a good question that I don't think I've ever been asked. I feel like I've always been a very highly creative person, but I feel like that was really suppressed within me. And I think we all have parts of us that are really suppressed, whether that be with intimacy, whether that be with communication, whether it be with relationship building, whether it be with our career. And when I was working in sales, I always wanted sales, right? I felt like I was never actually talking about or selling what I cared about. And I knew that therapy wasn't for me because it was like you couldn't sell and you're only capped at the number of clients. And my podcast, we just hit, like, we're at 10,200 downloads in 71 countries in 2 years or something like this, 2.5 years. And
wow.
So what you were saying, Creed, I just feel like my natural state is a creative state. And I feel like I was suppressed for so long in my thought process or my paradigm that creating was okay, or that it was like, you would be able to impact and make money doing it. And so yeah, I just think creation comes naturally to me. Like, and just like as if like talking comes, like your questions come, or like, it just was something that like I always found a way to create. And then I got invested really early in mentorship to learn how can I be creative and make money. And my podcast actually leveraged in my business as a lead generation. So we leverage it for free. And, anyone who comes and they never heard me, we always recommend they start there. And then based on the episodes they like, we can go into what book might be right for them or what self-study course may be right for them. So that's how we've really leveraged it in my business, and also as a global reach. So I don't know. I can't say like what's the process. I guess because it's almost like air I breathe. It's not necessarily like, I think about this like whole thing. It just is more like I had people in my community were requesting it and requesting it and requesting it. And I just started it in March. I think it was like 16th. I should look, we're coming up on 3 years of 19 now or whatever that would be, 2020. And yeah, it just kept going with it. I made a commitment back to this commitment thing. I decided, like, if you were going to do meditation, I decided I was going to do 1 episode a week for a full year. And I did that for 2 years in a row. And yeah, so I don't think there was like one way that I did it. It was just like this decision of what.
That's very cool because I'm always
like
curious to see the flip side of things and hear from somebody else's perspective of what it's like to go through the process because, much like yourself, I don't have anything written down. I just kind of go with the flow and kind of see where things take just because I feel like it's a lot more captivating. It's a lot more original and it's a lot. Yeah. I think it's better, a lot less scripted. It's like having a one-on-one with somebody. They're sitting right in front of you.
Yeah. And that's like how I built my brand, obviously, is on authenticity. So that was kind of mine. There wasn't like some magic trick. I don't think and none of my business, there was no like magic spell that I did that was like, oh my God, this is it. Like it really was like trial and error. And I put a lot of my money instead of into like Gucci or Chanel or, a name brand car, I put it into mentorship. I've invested over hundreds of thousands into mentorship and coaching to get close to people who are living a life that I wanted. And that I think is a lot of,
and that's not a whole lot that you hear from younger people. It's one of those things where it's something that is, I feel like is missing from society is being able to shoot for the moon, regardless of what that is, and being able to do it and not worry about what other people think and knowing that the hard work is going to pay off. But hard work is what traditionally I feel like makes you a better person. It gives you more empathy towards other people who are doing what you're doing or maybe taking a similar journey as you took as well. So, it's wonderful. And I want to thank you for coming on the show. I know this is going to resonate with a lot of people. I mean, it is something that I feel like if you're having a situation, regardless of what it is, that you've got something out there for that one person.
Yeah. And I think like I said, I mean, I think now we're at like 125 episodes on my podcast, but a really good place. I tell a lot of people if that's not obviously any of my books, I think are a good place, but I also have a $1 mindset audio that's called Shift to the Limitless. I know that yours is the Limitless Experience podcast. So I would recommend going to my website, colleengallagher.co, and you could get that. It's $1. So we've made it super affordable. It's about 20 minutes. We go through 3 steps of how to get into a limitless state. And then I also do a short guided meditation at the end. So that's like a really good way just to start. But I think again, like I said, like proximity is power in the digital world. What I love about it is it gives you access to get close to people who have an advanced mindset. Like even me, the people that I'm listening to, a lot of things I listen to now is passive income, building wealth. Those are things that I listened to, or before it was like, okay, how do you digital market? How do you build a community? How do you brand? That was like things I didn't know, right? And I really inundated my mind to make sure that it was information, anything negative, anything that wasn't pushing me towards that, like living a freedom lifestyle, traveling the world, how to create relationships, anything that wasn't pushing me towards that, I really disassociated myself from. And so I would, say if you resonate with this conversation, if you liked anything I shared, follow me, turn my notifications on, listen to what I put out there, because, with the right information, you're creating new neurological pathways in your mind that will allow you to accelerate. And there's nothing different between yourself and me of why I can do something and you can, or why you can and I can't.
Yes.
It's just consistently putting yourself on information.
And it's the mindset, being able to focus on the goal and push yourself towards that goal at all costs. Well, listen, I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to chat with me. It's been an absolute pleasure. Well, I'm going to post all the links to your website, all your social media below. And, I wish
Perfect.
you nothing but the best in the future. And your future is very bright. I can tell you, just from hearing where you started to where you are now, the sky's the limit.